No negotiating blueprint is complete without proper communication. The communication between the architect and the builder is a matter of words. Matter of fact, if I were to ask you in a negotiating circumstance, what do? Truth be told, we don't write each other letters. We don't give hand signals. You know what we do? We speak. Negotiation is a matter of language, verbal language. Oh, it's augmented by what we write, our facial expressions and body language, but the majority of it, what do you want to say? 80% is what we say and how we say it. I want to talk to you in this module about something called power language. And here's what I'm convinced of. Although I've got a lot of power language I want to share with you, this is only the first installment. Because as I do more and more speaking on negotiating, run into more great negotiators just like you, I'm hearing words and phrases all the time that frankly take my breath away. I say, wow, that is so good. I had no idea that that word was out there. So here's what I'm going to ask you. How good are you at coming up with the right word, the right phrase, and saying it the right way at the right time? In my live programs, I even ask people, do they have the gift? The gift is the ability in a high-pressure situation to know the right thing to say at the right time. Now, there's always a couple of people that kind of sheepishly put their hand up and say, I think I have it, and they probably do. But then I ask this, how many of you are like me, who never think of the right thing to say to about a half an hour to 40 minutes after? And all of a sudden, everybody's got their hand up saying, yep, that's me. If you don't know the right thing to say at the right time, 2 words, anticipate and prepare. You've heard them in other modules. Anticipate situations and prepare. Get your words together. How many out there have ever been told to get your stuff together? Well, I'm telling you right now, get your stuff together when it comes to language, power language. Not only what you say, but the specific word choice. Now, you may disagree with some of the power language I'm going to share, but I want to tell you something. I didn't come up with them on my own. I researched them, I have practiced them, and I know for a fact they work. So let's not get into an argument of what verbiage we should use. Instead, let's say, how can we make this work? Now, I'm going to race through 15 examples of power language. You may want to take some notes, because as you write them down, you'll be looking at them, thinking, when could I use them? And I'm going to tell you, you're going to find yourself wishing you had them on the tip of your tongue so you could use them in the right situation. Let's get started with number 1. The first power phrase I want you to use is, during a negotiation, you turn to somebody and simply say, you know, I might be able to agree with that, but only on one condition. One condition. What a great power phrase. Somebody asks you to make a concession. Will you go along and raise your price another $100? You know, I could probably agree to that on one condition. See that finger? One condition. How many think that's even a visual sign that there is a trade-off coming? I will accept it, but I want one thing from you. Now, I'm not here to tell you what the one thing is. That's what you got to figure out in the specific negotiation you're working on. But how many think you made it a conditional commitment? How do you structure a trade-off? I will agree to do what you want on one condition. You've now thrown down the gauntlet. If they meet that one condition, guess what? You've got a deal. Not only a deal, you've got a good deal. One condition. Here comes number 2. Somewhere during the end of a negotiation, when you sort of sense you've got as much as you can get, you may want to just take things really in a direction they never expected. After a little bit of kind of hard bargaining, you simply say, you know what, I need to confess something to you. You're really a good negotiator. How many think in the middle of a negotiation to simply stop and compliment somebody on their ability? How many think that is amazing? I learned it playing basketball. I had a guy just give me the business. He was defending like mad, and on one brief timeout, I said, by the way, it's tough playing against you. You're a really good defensive player. He was now spent so much time being prideful of his negotiating skill, he wasn't near as intense as he was before. What I'm saying is, what if you compliment a competing negotiator? You're really a good negotiator. Or you might even say, whoa, whoa, go easy on me. Obviously, you have more negotiating experience than me. I'm definitely overmatched. When you confess or admit or even if you feign that the other guy's a better negotiator, how many think it impacts them? You know what they do? They kind of relax and say, yeah, I am pretty good. Matter of fact, I'm so good, I probably got the best deal. This guy's already surrendering to me. Therefore, I probably should accept what we have on the table right now. How many would be willing to be humble in a negotiation so you could win a good deal? Frankly, I have no problem doing that. Humility is a great trait as a human being. And in negotiating, it's great. Just turn to somebody and say, by the way, I just want to let you know you're a really good negotiator. All of a sudden, their attitude of hostility changes to you dramatically. Here comes number 3. You have a word you've heard if you've been with me in my live program. It is the word courtesy. If you want something, don't ask for it. Ask for the courtesy of something. Well, look, I understand where you're at on this, but could you give me the courtesy of just $3 more, and I think we could put this deal together. You say, what's the word courtesy got to do with anything? You know what? Has nothing to do with it. But it is a basic human emotion that if you ask somebody to be courteous, it's very difficult for them not to be thinking courteously. And they often will make a concession they ordinarily wouldn't, simply because if they don't, it's like they're admitting they're discourteous. I'm going to challenge you. I challenge the people in my live programs all the time. When you go home from this seminar, or when you quit watching this module, I want you to find a friend. You're just chatting with them, normal conversation. Then all of a sudden, grab their hand, shake their hand and say, hey, I need you to do me a courtesy. Would you do me the courtesy of making my next car payment? You would be amazed at the response you get. Oh, by the way, don't anticipate they're going to make your car payment. They won't. They can't afford to. But you know what? They will pause. They will consider. They will even be in pain because they can't do it. Why? Not because of your request, but how you asked. The courtesy of a discount. I have called websites. I have called owners of websites and asked them for the courtesy of their discount code so I could get a better deal online. Now, they don't want to give that discount code out, but how many think when I get on the phone and simply say, I apologize, I've got to be one of the most frail customers you have, I can't figure out how to do things online, would you help me out? How many think I've already become humble with them? And then I say, I'm at the checkout line, and I see this little box where I need a discount code. Now, could you give me the courtesy of that discount code? I have been shocked. About half the time, people volunteer the discount code, and it's a code I'm not even entitled to. But how many think it's the way I asked? Before you pass on the word courtesy, would you just test mark it a couple times? Make some requests, add the word courtesy. Would you give me the courtesy of, then make your request. I think you're going to be surprised what you get. Now here's a power language word which you've got to start using. I'm going to ask you to eliminate one word and add a new word. The word I want you to eliminate is the word negotiable. You're selling a car. It's in your driveway. A person comes by and asks you how much you want. And you quote a figure. Oh, I got to have $11,000 for it. Notice you got tough. Got to have. Trying to set a bracket there, right? Got to have $11,000. You know what the guy says? Is it negotiable? Is it negotiable? Is that price negotiable? Well, you know what the truth of it is? You got 1,000, maybe 2 that you'd give gladly to put a deal together. But when somebody asks, is it negotiable? How many think they're really asking you, will you drop your price? Will you make a concession? How many think that's a tough question? If you say yes, it's negotiable, they're going to beat up on you. If you say no, you're kind of cutting off negotiations. Would you consider substituting the word discussable for negotiable? Well, how much you want for your car? $11,000. Well, is that price negotiable? Well, I'm not sure it's negotiable as much as it's discussable. I'm open to talking. Maybe we can put something together that'll work for both of us. How many think the word discussable simply commits you to talking, continue the bargaining, where if you admit that it's negotiable, that almost admits that you're willing to make a concession. Consider discussable for negotiable. Okay? Now here comes the next one. And number 5 is going to be, and somebody asks you to accept a figure, you might say, you know, I might go along with that, but I need to check with blank. Well, you've heard me mention this in other modules when we talk about having limited authority, where we don't want to agree to something without checking with somebody else whether we really need to or not. In this particular circumstance, have the verbiage ready. You know, I might agree with you on that proposal, but first I will need to check with blank. You don't want to stumble over those lines. You don't want to have it come across as it's contrived and you don't know what you're doing. When they make a proposal and you think it's pretty good, but you want to have them stew a little bit. You want to make them wait a little bit. You want to let them know that you kind of like what you heard. You know, that sounds pretty good. I think I could even agree to that, but first I'm going to have to check with blank. Having that verbiage down just kind of makes that segue into the opportunity to go check with somebody else a whole lot easier. You might be surprised how often that'll come up. Here are two words which I'm going to use in the same context, and it is your ability to set a bracket, an anchor. When somebody asks you if you've got room to move, or if you're stuck on your figure, or they ask you to accept a proposal they make, simply consider using one of two words. The word is budget, or the word is limit. Budget or limit. You say, well, well, how much are you willing to spend? Well, I have a budget of X amount of dollars. As soon as you say the word budget, how many think that turns that number not into just some frivolous number you throw out, but a very firm number, an anchor or bracket is what they call it in negotiating, from which you are going to be very reticent to move. Or the word limit. Well, my wife and I have established a limit of how much we can afford. People are very reluctant to ask you to break your budget or violate your limit. You need to be sending those word phrases out. Folks, they come out so easy. What are you looking to spend? Well, our budget is X. As soon as you say budget, you are locked in. Now, might you violate your budget? May you have to take time out and go see if you can expand the budget? Of course. Whoever made the budget can change the budget. Whoever set a limit can change the limit. But how many think those two words send a very firm message? This is where I want to stay. All right. Here's another one. And that is, you might simply say, no, you misunderstood me. I only wanted one. Let me say that another way. Somebody quotes a price. You call and you're looking for an attachment for your computer. And the guy says, well, that's going to be $300. And you say, oh, no, you misunderstand me. I only wanted one. Now, what that is kind of an erroneous conclusion flinch. Don't worry about what to call it. It's when they quote a price, you say, oh, no, you misunderstood. I only wanted one. Now, you know that price was only for one, but how many think that's a great way to flinch them, put them on their heels, and the guy's thinking, wow, my price must be so out of line. This guy thought he was going to get two for that price. So when they quote a price, and you say, well, wait a minute. No, you misunderstood. I only wanted one. Write that phrase down and see if you can employ that more often in your negotiating. Here comes the next one. You get down to the end of a negotiation and it's time for you to, I don't want to say split the difference because I don't like that concept. Splitting the difference means we both started at equally high and low figures. But there's a time when you need to quit bargaining, quit using tactics, and draw this thing to a close. So how do you ask somebody, could we get reasonable here? Could we quit fooling around and playing negotiating games? Could we put a deal together? I got a great phrase for you, where you simply say, well, look, I think we're very close. I'm not sure I could come to your number, but seriously, let me ask you, what could work for you? Listen to that phrase. What could work for you? It has two very important byproducts. Number one, it's a very soft phrase. What could work for you sounds very warm and fuzzy. Secondly, it puts the emphasis on a concern for your opponent, not you. Instead of saying, I demand this, you simply say, what could work for you? It typically causes the other side to kind of reduce their hostility and saying, look, I think he's saying we're about done bargaining, and if we're ever going to put a deal together, I probably need to put my best proposal here that would make sense for me, but would make sense for my opponent too. How many think what could work for you is a great phrase to use? Here's another one. The next power language item is the last time. You go to a vendor, service provider, equipment provider, cell phone service. The last time, that's the phrase, the last time I got cell phone service from you, you gave me this, this, and this. How many think because you did it the last time, there's a reasonable expectation you should get it again? It is using something we call the power of the precedent. The last time you updated my website, you also did this, this, and this at no extra charge. I'll assume you're going to do that again, aren't you? The last time reminds them that they made a big concession to you in the past, and it's time to do it again. Or you may modify it slightly. Maybe it's not a precedent they have. You may use a precedent from somebody else. Well, I've not worked with you on my website before, but the other guy that did it before did this, this, and this for me at that price. How many think now you're using somebody else's precedent to work on the current vendor? You think that won't work? It's putting the power of competition to work along with the power of precedent. Think about it. The last time you did that, I expect it again. The other guy did that, so now I expect it from you. Words that work. Power language, that's what we're all about. Here's another one. Somebody makes a proposal early on, and you simply say the following: I'm speechless. Now you could be silent. How many think silence is a pretty good flinch? Silence, just say nothing. But what if somebody gave a proposal? Well, what's all that going to cost me? I know I need a new roof and new gutters, and I need you to check the flashing while you're out there. What's that going to cost me? The guy says $22,000. You say, I got to tell you, I'm speechless. If he didn't already figure out you can hardly get a word out, then confirm it by saying, I'm speechless. You know what? You've already had 3 other bids and they were higher. This is the best bid so far. Matter of fact, you've got the money and can afford to pay it. But if you want to get a better deal, you simply say, I'm speechless. It's like your price is so far out of line, I can't even consider it. How many think that sets you up for a follow-up crunch? Is that the best you can do? How many think that I'm speechless is a great way to let them know you are just in awe, just unbelievably starstruck by what you heard? I'm speechless. Great word. It's even better than being silent. Okay? Here's another thing you might want to do. We talked in another program where we need to get people talking more. And I started using this phrase a while back, and it's really worked well for me. Early on in negotiation, where you're trying to learn about what services they offer, about the product and delivery and guarantee and warranty and so on, all of a sudden you say, you know what? I'm not sure how badly this guy needs the deal. I'm not sure if I understand everything that's happening here. So you want to get them talking more. So you simply say, you know, before we get any further, there's 3 things I need to understand. Notice I said 3 things I need to understand. How many think you've just communicated to the other side? Stand by. There are 3 inquiries coming your way. Now you better anticipate this, because you now got to come up with 3 things. Number 1, what's the biggest complaint people have had about your product or service? How many think that kind of sets them back on their heels? I like this one. A year from now, what will I have wished I had to put into the transaction with you that I'm not talking about right now? And number 3, what assurance am I going to have that I'm going to be satisfied with this in the future? I don't know what 3 things you asked, but how many think this person now is not asking you any questions? You are now ready to ask them 3. If you think 3 is too many, make it 2. All you have to do is say, before we go further, there's 3 things I need to understand. There's 2 things I need to understand. It's simply a matter of taking control by setting an agenda. I want to talk about the following 3 things. And they're going to be doing all the talking. That talking is going to be the capacity for you to get a better deal. You might even add this one. And the 3rd thing I need to understand is, what do I need to do to get a better price on this? How many think that is a great way to ask them to reposition what they're charging you and give you a concession? Here comes another one. I hope you can appreciate. What a great way to start. I hope you can appreciate. Somebody asks you to cut your fee. Let's say you're on the selling side. Somebody says, well, what do you charge? You quote a price and they say, wow, will you discount that 20%? How do you answer when somebody asks you to make a concession, a price concession? Here's a great way to start. The word is I can appreciate. It sounds like this. I can appreciate the fact you would want me to give a discount. Hope you can also appreciate that there's no way I can do that for you. How many think appreciation is a lost art? Do we feel unappreciated? Do we feel like a cucumber on the way to the pickle factory? How many think we ought to be able to say, I appreciate? And somebody says, I want you to cut your fee. They may be a little tense because they just got in your face and asked you to cut your fee. Instead of getting upset, what do you say? I can appreciate from your position that you want me to cut my fee. Hope you can also appreciate that there's just no way I can do that. How many think that's the nicest way you've heard in a long time for somebody to say, no, I won't cut my price, or no, I won't increase my offer? I can appreciate. Put that appreciation clause to work. It's always good when things get tense to apologize. Somewhere in the middle of the negotiation, all of a sudden there's a kind of a tense moment. You say, well, let's stop for a minute. I got to apologize. My tone was totally inappropriate. I got to apologize. What I said about your product was just out of order. How many think when you apologize, that's part of that what? Humility that causes them to think, just relax. It causes them to put their defenses down. Simply apologizing. I've said I'm sorry. I swear I sometimes say I'm sorry 4 to 6 times during every negotiation. I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm sorry, I can't make that concession. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It doesn't come off as being kowtowing or incompetent. It simply says, I simply want you to recognize me as a human being. I care that you get a good deal out of this also. Oh, if somebody ever crunches you and when you quote your price, they come back and say, is that the best you can do? You might want to say, you know what, I might be able to improve that, but I will not negotiate against myself. Listen to that phrase again. I will not negotiate against myself. When you quote a price, I'm going to need $400 for this, and they say, is that the best you can do? How many think they're asking you to drop your $400 price and they haven't even made a counter offer yet? You say, you know what, I might have some room to bargain a little bit, but I need to hear from you. Well, no, I want to hear if you'll better that 400. No, I won't negotiate against myself, because that's really what you're doing when you change your offer before you've heard one from them. Listen again. If they ask you to better your proposal before they make a counter, be ready to say, I will not negotiate against myself. I'm willing to negotiate in good faith, but I want to hear what your proposal is next. It forces them to make that decision. You've already heard this one time and time again, so I'll say it very quickly. The most powerful 7 words in negotiating, in my opinion, is that the best you can do. Of all the power language example, those 7 words get more concessions from the other side than any 7 words I've ever heard of. We'll talk about it in other modules, but don't forget to add. If you're ever going to get a tattoo on negotiating, put it right on your arm. Is that the best you can do? That will pay for your next vacation over the course of a year or 2 of bargaining. And last item we deal with, I could probably agree on one condition. We talked about it before, but I want to emphasize it again. All you need to do is let people know that you're close to a settlement, but you have one more obstacle in its way. People love negotiating when they know they're getting close to the end, close to a deal, and frankly, they can pretty well live with what's on the table right now. So you need that one power language item, which is, I'm going to need one more thing. And that's always brought out by, I can agree with that, but on one condition. Now, do you think we could probably add more power language? You know what you're thinking right now? The last time I negotiated, I said this, and it really worked. I'd love to hear from you. Just talk to John at keepnegotiating.com. Drop me an email and let me know what key phrase is working for you. We'll trade them off, because great negotiators love to work together. And I like to work with you so you have more power language as you keep negotiating.